Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternities, ranking all the episodes of Season 2 of Star Trek Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review every episode of Star Trek. And at the end of covering Season 2 of Voyager, I'm here to rank all of the episodes of Season 2 of Voyager from my least favorite to my favorite. Something that I love doing at the end of every season, sort of the recap and look back on the season. So, Season 2 of Voyager, I think, is widely disliked. It's kind of the opposite of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine, where I was just talking about where most people like it. I didn't really care for it. I mean, I still liked it, I just didn't think it was one of the best seasons ever, to be clear. But Season 2 of Voyager is the opposite case, and a lot of people seem to dislike it, hate it, call it one of the worst seasons of the show, or sometimes even the worst season of the show. I very strongly disagree on this. I had named it the third best season of the show previously, and I think that's probably going to remain true once I finished my coverage of it. I think Season 3 of Voyager is the clear worst season of Voyager. I think it's way worse than Season 2, which really shocks me when some people say Season 3 of Voyager was when the show got good. That's the exact opposite of what actually happened. That's when the show got bad, but then it got good again in Season 4. Then it got mediocre for the last 3 seasons. But I noticed, I did this top 10 before of the 10 Star Trek episodes that everyone else loves that I hate. And I noticed that Voyager dominated that countdown. And just in general, it seems like Voyager is the show with the most episodes that other people like that I don't. So I think we're just crisscrossed on Voyager. In fact, there is a very episode in this season that was actually number 1 on that particular countdown, which I'll get to very shortly. But yeah, before I do, to talk about Season 2, I used to say it was my second favorite behind Season 4, but then after I watched the whole show, I was like, no, actually, I think I do like Season 1 better than Season 2. And I think that holds. Here's the thing, when I was rewatching Season 2 this time around, I was in the first 7 episodes, I'm like, am I sure this is a good season? Because it was just one bad episode after another to begin with. And we had what was that one that can't remember what it's called, not ex post facto, but something else that's Latin. What? Hold on, I gotta look this up again. What's it called? It is called non sequitur. That's it. Non sequitur was the only one that first bit that I thought was halfway decent. The rest of them I thought were bad. So I was like, maybe I'm wrong about Season 2. Maybe Season 2 isn't as good as I remember. But once I got over that hump, the season started getting really good. There was a couple mediocre episodes, but mostly it was good episodes with this couple of very, very strong episodes. In fact, I have 4 episodes I gave a 9 out of 10, and 3 episodes I gave a 10 out of 10, which is very impressive for a season. Not unheard of, but it does indicate a very strong season. But there were still 3 terrible episodes, even after you get over that first hump, so it wasn't like everything was great. But, I think the good really does make up for the bad. And I think I will stand firmly behind that this is the third best season of the show. Because, and as I talked about before, episodes aren't everything. There is a feel and a tone of a season, how it worked, like how the characters worked, and like even throughout the bad episodes, I actually prefer the style and the tone of season 2 to that of later seasons, and especially to that of season 3, because there was a more sense of community. There was, because Voyager in particular is a ship trapped out in the middle of nowhere, so it's a floating community, and they don't really like go to star bases or restock or get new recruits and offload people. Like, they're all stuck there, so there should be a community, and you can feel that in these first 2 seasons, even this season. And it had more of a sense of continuity as well. It had recurring characters like Hogan, and that storyline with Michael Jonas, and the storyline with the Doctor's Vadine girlfriend, and like just in Seska as a repeat villain. It felt like there was continuity, like stuff that happened in the show mattered and consequences mattered, whereas especially when we get into seasons 5 through 7, felt like everything, that reset button was slammed fucking hard ass after every single episode, and that nothing mattered. It was just different forehead aliens attacking the ship every week, which I will get to when I get to those 3 seasons. So I feel like, and I'm still shocked that this one YouTuber I watched said that, oh, season 2 had no continuity. And I'm like, what in the actual are you talking about? Like, and he was like, oh, there was a Michael Jonas thing, but that was it. No, actually, it wasn't it. There was Hogan, there was Seska, there was what's her face, the Doctor's Vadine girlfriend. There was a lot of things where there was continuity, whereas when you get to later seasons, there's no continuity. Like, okay, there's a little bit. There's the Borg kids, and there's some continuity with 7 of 9, but that's pretty much it. So, getting into the average score of season 2, it was a 6.46, which is slightly lower than season 1, which is a 6.8, which sounds about right to me. It is very similar to season 4 of Deep Space Nine, where it is higher than season 5 of TNG, and obviously higher than seasons 1 and 2 of TNG, because those suck, but not as high as seasons 3, 4, 6, and 7 of TNG. It's similar to DS9 season 4, and it's also better than DS9 season 1, but not better than DS9 season 3. But unlike season 4 of DS9, this one actually has a higher score than season 2 of Deep Space Nine, something that season 4 of DS9 could not pull off. And of course it's higher than season 4 of DS9. So, and that also sounds right to me. And as I said, like, the average score is not everything. As I was saying with season 4 of Deep Space Nine, even though it had a lower score than season 2, I think it was still better than season 2. Whereas this one, I think it fits. It makes sense. I would kind of put this one on par with season 4 of TNG, which had a 6.76, and this season had a 6.46, so it is actually very close in score, and so that does seem kind of right. Maybe I would put this higher than season 4 of TNG. Maybe I think so, because it just had more good episodes. Also had more bad episodes, but still, I don't know. I think the good episodes account for a lot for me, and yeah. But I like the tone of both seasons, so it's kind of hard to say. Anyway, yeah, the point is, I think this is clearly one of the best seasons of Voyager. So, as for how many negative rated episodes compared to positive rated episodes, let's give a rating between 1 and 10, and I consider 1 through 5 a negative rating and 6 through 10 a positive rating. In that regard, there was, I believe, 7 negative rated episodes, and 17 wait, is that right? Hold on. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, 9. There's 9 negative rated episodes and 17 positives. So it's essentially 1/3 of the season got negative rating, which is decent. It's better than season 4 DS9, which they had nearly half were negative ratings. But as I said, there was a whole bunch of 9s and 10s in this season, which has performed better than DS9 season 4 and most other seasons for that matter, and 4 8s for that matter, or 5 8s, sorry. So yeah, most of the positive ones are on the higher side. So as I said, when the episodes that were good were really good, and plus that combined with the sense of continuity and the sense of community, I think makes for a really good season. So let's go ahead and jump into this, shall we? As always, a card will flash in front of the screen that will tell you what the ratings of the episodes I'm about to talk about have. As I said, I give every episode a rating between 1 and 10. So we shall start at the bottom with the 1 rated episodes. Alright, coming in at the bottom of my ranking, my rating for the episodes of Season 2 of Voyager, with a rating of a 1, so the worst, and it is also in my top 15 worst episodes of the entire franchise. This is my top 5 worst of Voyager. And it's Tuvix. It is Tuvix. This was the episode I was referring to, of course. That was number 1 on my countdown of episodes that I hate that other people seem to like, because a lot of people praise this episode, and a lot of people say it's a really good episode, and a lot of people quote it and argue about it, and I'm just like, it's a written mess. And I'm not going to get into the details here of exactly why I think it's a mess, just simply because I don't have enough time to. And I feel like if I just briefly explain it, then people will try to argue with that, but I need proper time to actually make my argument if I'm going to say it. So I'm not going to. You can check out my review for this, my full-length review. It's on my channel if you want to hear what I'm talking about. What I will say is that it was very poorly written. It was so badly written that the scenes that are meant to be drama I find hilarious because they're terrible, because they're so melodramatic and over the top, and how flung convoluted, and the whole episode can't decide if it's a comedy or a serious drama until it turns into an over-the-top melodrama at the end of the episode, which is like whiplash. Is like, whoa. And plus, this main character, is supposed to be a combination of 2 other characters, Tuvok and Neelix, and yet he doesn't act like either of them. He's selfish, self-absorbed, and narcissistic. Neither Tuvok or Neelix have those qualities. And it's just, and all the characters are just dumb in this episode. It's so poorly written. I think it's one of the most poorly written episodes of the show, and it will never cease to absolutely blow my mind that tons of people actually like this episode. Okay, fine. I will briefly say one thing, is that I hate the argument. The argument's so invalid of whether or not Janeway is justified in killing Tuvix, because Tuvix did not die, because Tuvix never fucking existed in the first place. It was always Tuvok and Neelix in another form. There. As I said, Watch my full-length review if you want more information on that. I'm not going to respond to any comments in this video about that. Anyway. Alright, so let's get to my 2 rated episodes, which is actually quite a bit above the previous episode, and this is the episode that most people expected me to put at the bottom as the worst episode of the season, because most people consider it the very worst episode of the show and one of the worst of the franchise. And that I'm referring to, of course, my number 25, Threshold. Yeah, so I gave it a 2 out of 10. It's this my second to least favorite episode of the season, so it's not like I like this. It's not like I think it's a gem of an episode and it's amazing. But I don't think it's quite as bad as people say it is. In fact, I just kind of dismissed this as an averagely mediocre episode until people kept pointing out, like, but the ending's so ridiculous. And here's the thing, like, at first, when I first saw this, I didn't even think the ending was that ridiculous, because I see ridiculous shit like this all the time on Star Trek. I'm used to it, like Geordi turning into the Gecko and shit like that. And so this didn't seem out of, but the more I looked at it, I was like, okay, so Paris and Janeway turn into salamanders and have babies, and they just leave these salamander babies on the planet. Like, that is fucking weird. It's really dumb. So I will admit the ending is fucking outrageous, but the rest of the episode is just like mediocrely bad. It's just like, it's nothing to write home about. It's just boring about Paris turning into a lizard and ripping out his whole tongue and acting all crazy. He's like, Janeway, I love you, blah, blah, please help me. And then the next second, like, fuck you, Janeway, how dare you? You can't stop me from becoming this lizard. It's just dumb. And he's screaming about pepperoni pizza for no good goddamn reason, and Cass decides to kiss him after he died of an unknown cause and mutated? Like, what? But yeah, so believe me, I get it's a 2 out of 10, which is a very bad rating, but I just don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think Tuvix is way worse, but that is just me. Alright, so let's get to my 3 rated episodes, starting with my number 23, Innocence. So when I was referring to there being 3 terrible episodes after the start of the season, these were the 3 I was referring to: Tuvix, Threshold, and Innocence. All at the bottom of my list too. Yeah, I mean, this is like, it's supposed to be funny, I guess. Is like, isn't this cute? Tuvok has to take care of these kids, and isn't it cute that the kids are actually old people because this alien ages in reverse. And the alien was meeting with Janeway and never bothers to fucking tell her that they age in reverse. Never fucking bothers to tell her that there's some other, elderly people go to this moon to die, and they got trapped there where Janeway's officer was also trapped. Didn't bother to tell us. Like, everything could have been avoided if they just simply talked. And I freaking hate that. I don't think that's good storytelling, and on top of that, it's annoying. These kids are annoying, and that's supposed to be the point. You're supposed to go, that's funny, there's annoying kids with Tuvok. It's not funny. It's just annoying. And why is Tuvok treating the children like they're Vulcan children when clearly they're not? I just don't get it. Anyway. We'll get to my number 20. Did I say that was 23? That was 24. Sorry. Get to my actual number 23, which is Initiations, another I episode. The Nog Kazon. And yeah, I know Aaron Eisenberg is amazing. Everyone thinks he's the best actor of all time. But I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but Nog. I didn't like Nog, especially in the earlier seasons. And, until he came back as a different character called Bog, but I'll get into that later. We haven't had Bog introduced yet. But, this is basically, he's just doing Nog. Like, you tell it right away. Like, he even acts like Nog. It's just like Nog, but a Kazon. And it's just very similar to, in the sense, it's annoying. Having the kids hang out, in this case, kid, but whatever, hang out with Chakotay and be all annoying and blah 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 blue and look the K. And this is the episode I think is my least favorite Kazon episode of the entire show. A lot of people talk about how the Kazon suck, and I won't necessarily argue with that, but there's a lot of good episodes that feature the Kazon. Especially in this season. We had State of Flux, Great This Sucks, in the previous season. So this is really the only really bad Kazon episode. They just come off as annoying dickheads. They're supposed to resemble LA gangs, but they resemble, like, Klingon ripoffs. This is really what actually happened. But anyway, getting to my number 22, which is Twisted. So, this episode is about this weird monopoly thingamababa taking over the ship, making it twisted so that all of the rooms are in different places and they're in different parts of the ship and they get lost constantly. They don't know where they are. But all the rooms happen to like shift perfectly, whereas there's no like walls being knocked down or destroyed or parts of the ship open to space or anything like that. It's just like perfectly reassembled. Like, how does that even work? And the whole episode is just people wandering around the hallways like, where's engineering? I want to find engineering. Do you know where engineering is? No, I'm trying to get to the bridge. Do you know where that is? And just constantly just getting lost and like, that's not fucking interesting. And then how they resolve this perilous situation is by sitting around and doing nothing. I don't like that. That's boring. It is boring. This episode's boring. Anyway, the only fun I had watching this episode was when I watched my friend who said everyone was on LSD and tripping, and they were just making all the comments about Neelix putting LSD in the cake and being like, "Who wants cake?" That was the only way this episode was any interesting. Alright, so next we're getting into my 4, I'm jumping the gun here, my 4 rated episodes, starting with my number 21, which is Elogium. You know, I was looking up on IMDb, and this was like in the bottom 5 worst ever. I think it might have been the second to lowest bottom episode of Voyager, and I don't like this episode, but it's not that bad. I mean, you do have Tuvix saying, "Captain, it appears we have lost our sex appeal," which is the best out of context quote in all of Star Trek. But, I mean, it's kind of goofy with these aliens. Like, it's a ripoff of Galaxy's Child, except these aliens are horny instead of being a baby. And they're trying to mate with Voyager, and it's like, you know, it's fine or whatever. I mean, it's unoriginal, but it's not terrible. And the whole thing about Kes being like, "Oh, if I want to have a baby, I have to have now," and she's like hounding Neelix, like, "Neelix, out there, you not want to have a baby?" And Neelix is like, "Okay, I'll do it." And she's like, "Actually, no, it's not." Like, I get what they were trying to do, but that's I don't know. I didn't like that. But this is the episode we find out that Samantha Wildman is pregnant. And they just play, again, this is one of the episodes that really plays on the theme of Voyager being a community. And Chakotay and Janeway being faced with the fact that people are going to start hooking up and shanking up with one another. And I wish they actually played on this more as the show went on. But as I said, season 3 sucked. And 5 and 6 and 7 acted like every episode was completely in a bubble. I wish they kept this sense of community. So I did like that aspect of this episode, which is why I wouldn't say it's the worst thing ever. So, next we get into number 20, which is projections. This episode is, I don't know, I was going to say too clever for its own good, but I don't even know if clever is the right term for it. It's maybe pretentious might be a better way to describe this episode. Is like it thinks it's all smart and twisty, but it puts one twist too many, or several twists too many in there, especially at the end. That ending pisses me the fuck off, where they, if they just ended the episode with the doctor, like, Chakotay be telling the truth, and the doctor it was in the holodeck running a program, and just ended. But no, it had to keep going with another twist. Oh, when Cass is like, "Oh, does that mean you don't love me anymore?" And then they had the Kazon come in, and someone spoke. Oh, it was another version of the doctor spoke with Janeway's voice. It's like, you're just being pretentious now. You're just being dumb. You should have fucking ended the episode. That really irritates me. And the whole thing with Barkley saying, "Oh, you're a real person," is not very interesting, because we, the audience, know that the Doctor isn't a fucking real person. We know that this show isn't all a simulation, because if that was the case, then everyone would be fucking pissed for wasting an entire year with this show. So we know that's not going to be the case. So it's kind of boring. When they, and as I said before, like, the whole episode is like, "You're a real person." "No, I'm not." "You're a real person." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." And that's not really interesting, especially when we know the answer. But I do give them, some credit for weird mind-bending shit and whatever, I guess. Anyway, we'll get to my number 19, which is the 37s. This is too on the nose. Oh, look, we gotta have Amelia Earhart. And plus, it's like the whole, like, oh, let's say that Amelia Earhart was abducted by aliens, and these aliens traveled all the way from the Delta Quadrant, snatched up some humans, and traveled all the way back to the Delta Quadrant in order to use them as slave laborers. Like, could you not find any slave labor force maybe a little bit closer to where you were? Like, what? It's and also, like, oh, there's amazing cities on this planet because these human population that survived and they thrived on this planet, and there's such amazing, beautiful, high-tech cities that happen off screen. That, of course, is beyond their budget. Come on. Like, that's, and then, oh god, the thing that irritates me the most about this episode is the whole, oh, some people are going to leave the ship, let's go to the cargo bay to see how many people are leaving the ship, and no one leaves. Bullshit, no one leaves. Tons of people should have been leaving. That's so annoying and so tropish. And also Amelia Earhart's in this episode, I guess. Anyway. Alright, so now we're up. This time we are up to my 5 rated episode, my number 18, which is Parturition. And, I used to really hate this episode, and I think a lot of people still do hate this episode. What I remembered most from it was Neelix and Paris being really jealous at each other and getting into a food fight, which I hated. Absolutely hated that whole storyline about Neelix being jealous over Paris. And first of all, like, I'm sorry, but it's absolutely a fact that Paris was flirting with Cass Hartout, and he was being wildly inappropriate with her. Mainly in the previous episode, Twisted, where he gave her this like very romantic locket, and going out of it, and he's like talked about how he gave up all of his rations to do it. And I'm like, that's not cool, dude. And so I hated this whole storyline. And so that's why I remember hating this episode. But it's actually a decent episode. I actually kind of like the thing with Paris and Neelix going on the planet and sort of bonding over helping this alien baby. And I thought it was a really natural storyline. It made a lot of sense. And Paris lied to Neelix and said that he respected him too much to hit on Cass, which is a fucking lie. But hey, he bought it and they made up and they saved the baby alien. And so I thought it was kind of cute. I thought the little puppet was cute. I'm sorry, I did. So good enough to earn a 5. Alright, here we are at the positive side now, getting into my number 17, 6 rated episodes. My number 17, which is Tattoo, not that little dude from Fantasy Island, but an episode about Chakotay and his heritage, and a lot of people hold that against this episode because it is not an accurate depiction of Native American culture. It's inaccurate, which is not culturally sensitive, and it's because the consultant, Native American consultant on the show, was a fraud. He had been discovered to be a fraud before this episode, before the show was even made. So Rick Berman, of course, hired him. But, I think, as I said, that the head writers, Jerry Taylor and Michael Pillard, didn't know that, and they had good intentions, and their intentions were to honor Native American culture. Their execution kind of failed at doing that. But I still think this is an interesting episode, good enough to earn a 6 because we get Chakotay's backstory. Although young Chakotay, the actor who plays the teenage Chakotay, is absolutely terrible, but his father is a really good actor. But it's interesting backstory for Chakotay and how much he's grown and how he was rejecting his culture and wanted to just join Starfleet, but now he's all about honoring his culture and respecting it, and he finds Mr. Littman, who apparently was an alien who helped the Native Americans become morally superior or some. Yeah, that's the offensive part of the episode. But to me, it just strikes me as TOS. Like, TOS does shit like this all the time. Not excusing it, but I just like the character backstory they do for Chakotay in this episode. That eagle that attacks Neelix is kind of cheesy. Oh, the bird! But no, I do think it's interesting that Chakotay had to sort of be reminded of something of his past and respect his culture, and we got a deeper look into his characters. So yeah, I actually thought it was a decent episode. So next we'll get into my number 16, which is Meld, an episode most people like way better than I do. I don't hate this episode. Again, 6 out of 10. But, I mean, it's fine. It's what bothered me the most is like 2 episodes in a row we got a scene of someone in sickbay going crazy and yelling at Janeway behind a force field. The previous episode being Threshold, where Paris was yelling at Janeway behind a force field. But this time we got Tuvix behind a force field yelling at Janeway in sickbay. But I mean, that felt a little repetitive. Like, be a bit more original than that. But the episode's kind of interesting. Brad Dourif, of course, amazing performance. Like, they really, really benefited from his acting and playing this crazy guy. Although the doctor says he's not a sociopath, which doesn't make any sense because clearly he is. Like, I don't get that part, but they just didn't want the answer to be simple for Tuvok. And the whole thing with Tuvok going crazy because of the mind meld, like, I saw that coming from a billion miles away. And it's kind of like this has this kind of pop psychology thing with, like, oh, I feel you when you do violence, you feel this and that. And I think that's really strikes me as inauthentic, and I really hate it when shows do that. But not a terrible episode, still somewhat interesting. I do like how they tackled the subject of what they would do if someone had to be thrown in jail for their lives when they're on a ship traveling nowhere, and it's not really practical to keep someone in the brig forever. So it was an interesting that Tuvok and Janeway had that disagreement where Tuvok is being like, you're being ridiculous by not killing him. Interesting. But Janeway's perspective is we're, Starfleet, we're beyond capital punishment. Unless you go visit the Telosians, then we'll kill you. But other than that... Alright, so now getting into my 7 rated episodes, starting with my number 15, Non-Sequitur, the episode I was referring to. A lot of people seem to hate this episode, which I don't get. I always liked it. I always thought it was an interesting episode. People were saying, I like whenever they do like these weird parallel universe alternate timeline episodes. I usually almost always like them. It's just an interesting concept. And I love seeing Harry Kim and his being with his girlfriend, fiance Libby, and I think the actress who plays her does a really good job, and they had really strong chemistry. There's a backstory get wrong told about that. Apparently she was a good kisser and was overperforming when they were filming their scenes, but according to him anyway. But I think it actually showed, like the chemistry showed on screen. A lot of people complain that they don't buy that Harry Kim would be so desperate to get back to Voyager. Why would he just want to leave his girlfriend behind? But I disagree. I think it makes absolute total sense because he is moral. He would have a guilty conscience. He could never live with himself if his happiness was at the expense of 2 other people, particularly Tom Paris, whose life was ruined in this timeline, and that other dude, Danny Bird or whatever, that took his place on Voyager. I knew that it makes sense. Like, it totally makes sense for his character that he would not simply be like, oh, fuck those guys, I'm happy here, let me chill with my girlfriend. Like, that's not in character for him. So I do totally buy that he would go out of his way. Did they make it a bit melodramatic over the top by having the Admiral think he's a Maquis agent and send all these security officers after him? Yes, that was a bit much. But it was still interesting. I still like it. But anyway, we'll move over to my number 14, which is Investigations, the conclusion of the Michael Jonas storyline. Not the best conclusion. Like, some people hated the Michael Jonas storyline. I didn't. I actually really liked it. It had a lot of potential. But as often is the case with Voyager, it failed to live up to that potential, where I feel like they should have tied Michael Jonas to the finale. They should have tied it to the Kazon taking over Voyager rather than it be what it was with them just tricking Chakotay about with his son. I think it would have been much better to do that. Instead, we get the stupid morning show with Neelix, which I hated, absolutely hated. And Neelix trying to act like a reporter, which was dumb. And then Neelix starring Michael Jonas in the Warp Fire or whatever, which is dumb. But I like the plot, the reveal that Tom Paris was acting up on purpose to sort of try to trick them to see where, try to figure out who the spy was, and then they figured it out. Like that was in Seska. Always great to see her. So yeah, it was interesting enough in that regard. So get to my number 13. Speaking of Seska, my number 13 is Maneuvers. Kind of cat and mouse, very intricate, interesting. Seska trying to manipulate Voyager. I think I'm a bit annoyed of the fact that she's so successful. I think it might be interesting if there's a bit more give and take there. I mean, suppose you could say there is, because Chakotay does successfully destroy all the technology that she stole. So they do win in the end, but he has to get the crap beat out of him in response. Maj Kola and all that, and Chakotay disobeying Janeway, and Janeway getting pissed off with him. And I disagreed with, I think it was one of the writers who said that they felt like that Janeway should have thrown Chakotay in the brig and been more harsh on him. I disagree. I think I actually really like the line at the end where she says, "I'm gonna put a citation in your file or whatever, if that even means anything anymore." And he's like, "Well, it means something to me. It means that I let you down." Like that, you could tell there was such way. I think that was a very good line. I think that was way more powerful than her throwing him in the brig. And plus, let's be fair, because that writer, I think it was Kenneth Biller, was saying, "Oh, if it was Picard, he would have thrown him ass in the brig." Actually, not true. Picard would have done this. That's what he always does. So this is kind of in line with Star Trek. I mean, Worf murdered someone and took his comm badge off in order to do it, and Picard is just like, a reprimand will appear on your record. Now, he murdered someone. But anyway, Alright, so we're now moving on to my 8 rated episodes. We're not even to my top 10, we're already at my 8 rated episodes. So again, that's saying there's a lot of strong episodes this season. So we'll start with my number 12, which is Death Wish. Maybe I don't like this episode quite as much as some people do, because some people go a bit crazy for Q. I think it is the best Q episode outside of Next Generation, but that's not a high bar to clear, to be fair. It was. I think it does retcon a lot of the Q. I think the portrayal of the Q in this episode is very inconsistent with how the Q have been portrayed before. They try to make excuses for it, but Q almost killed himself already in the episode Deja Q. And they never act like it was going to undo the entire continuum. In fact, they seem to be okay with him killing himself. So, but anyway, it is still a powerful episode about where we meet another Q, and he wants to kill himself, and the Q won't let him, and he explains. It's a really interesting dive into the topic of assisted suicide, and it's different. It was than the way it was handled in Deep Space Nine. In the episode The Quickening, because that was more about terminally ill, where this was more about not terminally ill, but still suffering in another way, which is interesting. I think still valid, so I think it was a powerful episode. So next we'll get into my number 11, which is Dreadnought. I do like this episode. It is really suspenseful. It's also a good character episode for B'Elanna, because it really shows her dealing with her biggest regret and how something she did hot-headedly and against Chakotay's order orders comes back to bite her in the ass, and she tries to outwit it, but is often outwit by a smart bomb. And you also get Janeway saving these people who at first believed Kazon's lies and didn't think their Voyager were good people, but then found out Janeway earned their trust and did everything she could, nearly destroyed Voyager in order to save this planet. So that was really edge of your seat kind of stuff, really exciting. Major flaw in this episode, though, well, two flaws. The minor one is that the caretaker brought over an empty missile. Like, why would it do that? It's looking for sentient people. It's the whole point. And why did the missile just fuck off before Voyager and the Maquis ship arrived? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But the major flaw with this episode is that this is supposed to be a very smart, intelligent AI that is smart enough to outwit B'Elanna and the Voyager crew at every single turn, yet it can't use its own fucking sensors to realize that it's in the fucking Delta Quadrant. I'm sorry, I don't buy that in a million billion years. So that annoys me about this episode. But otherwise, it's pretty good. So, next we'll get into my number 10, which is Bring the Fire! Cold Fire, which kind of come off as a little hokey at times. Like, the Tanis guy is obviously a fucking creep, and the characters seem unaware of this, even though it's beyond obvious. But I love this delving into Kessa's character and her telepathic powers. This is something I wish that the show did more of, especially in season 3. Instead of turning her into a sex object, they should have fucking explored her telekinesis, telepathic powers. This was a really interesting avenue to explore. And so it was interesting seeing this creep who had advanced powers sort of teaching her more. The ending was a little bit cheesy. And again, we have another character being obtuse, thinking, oh, you killed the caretaker, when clearly they didn't. But I like the horror tone of this episode. I think it works and comes off as significantly creepy. Speaking of that, not speaking of that yet. Now, we're getting into my number 9, which is Basics Part 1 and 2. I did forget to mention this at the start of the video, but I'm keeping with the tradition that I was doing during Next Generation, where if there's a two-parter that spans 2 seasons, like part 1's at the end of one season, part 2's at the beginning of the next season, I count it as one episode and in the season in which part 1 aired. Which I think makes sense for Basics, because it does seem like it's more of season 2 than it is of season 3. I think this was a interesting, really suspenseful 2-parter. I don't like all the retcons that happened in part 2, because it was clear Michael Piller was pushed off the show and Jerry Taylor was taking over, and so they were doing everything they could to sweep everything under the rug, say it's not Chakotay's sons, and kill off Seska and have the Kazon fuck off. Like, that bothered me, especially the Chakotay's son thing. That really, really bothered me. But if we look past that, it's actually a very effective episode. I don't like the fact that Seska was able to fool the Voyager crew so easily. Like, they could tell they were falling into a trap, yet they still fell into a trap. Does kind of annoy me. This is why it would have been better if they used Michael Jonas instead. But the whole thing with bringing Suter back and having him be the one, like, the scenes with Suter in part 2 were just so good. They were so powerful, with him like bringing himself to tears because he's forced to kill again when he's sworn off killing. Like, that was really powerful stuff. And it was really suspenseful leaving the ag, and the whole entire crew stuck on this planet, and how will they survive, and how will they get off the planet. It was one of the better cliffhangers of the entire franchise, I think. So now we will get into a more creepier episode. My number 8, which is the Thaw. Now, I don't think I like this episode quite as much as some people do. Some people love it and say it's one of the best ever. I find the whole concept of clown festival a bit cheesy. They're in a Delta Quadrant. They have clowns there too. Granted, it looks very different. The makeup design on the clown's really cool, unique, and Michael McKean does an amazing job. And it drags a bit in the middle. It's a little bit boring with the clown tormenting Harry Kim. It gets a little bit tiresome, but that ending was fucking good. That ending where Janeway tricks the clown by bringing in a hologram version of Janeway, that was so good. And the Doctor does such a good job negotiating with the clown. There's a lot of good character moments in this episode. So yeah, mostly really good episode. Alright, so now getting into my 9 rated episodes, really getting up there. Starting with my number 7, Prototype. Yeah, I gave this a 9. I like this episode a lot better on the rewatch than I normally did. I think this is probably the best B'Elanna Torres episode in the entire show. Because they ruin her character later when they hook her up with Tom Paris. But this is what I missed. This is seeing her as an engineer, seeing her strive, seeing her create. And it's such a good character story for her to essentially give life to this new life form, but then being forced to kill it. It was so good, and it's also a counterbalance to the whole Prime Directive thing. All those naysayers about the Prime Directive being oh, you just let people die, blah blah blah. But here, when Janeway was telling B'Elanna to not help these robots procreate, and she did, and then found out they're killer robots that murder people, and they would go around murdering tons of people if she helps them survive. So, Prime Directive is a fucking good thing. But yeah, and those robots are cool. Some people complain it's a little cheesy looking, but I like it. I think it works. I don't think it's too cheesy. I think it's the right amount of cheese. But I just think, that there's a really good character story for B'Elanna, and really suspenseful. And yeah, the twist that these robots killed all their masters was very TOS-like, so in a good way. So anyway, we will then get to my number 6, which is Alliances, which I really do like this episode. It's funny because I think I like it for the same reason that some people hate it, and that's that this is what the show should have been. This show should have kept doing this, should have done alliances, should have made it an ongoing storyline with Voyager being forced to make an alliance with the Kazon sect, and how they had this loose alliance of people they couldn't trust. That would be fascinating. And yes, it's annoying that they present a problem at the start of the episode like they're doomed by the Kazon unless they make an alliance, and they don't make an alliance, and the Kazon are even more pissed off with them, but somehow they're not doomed anymore. They didn't do anything to fix the situation. In fact, they made it worse. So I don't get that. But it was fascinating seeing Janeway try to negotiate with Seska and other Kazon, and eventually make friends with these Trey, but then learn that they can't be trusted. That was fascinating. It was a lot of good moments, a lot of good character moments. One of the best episodes, use of the Kazon. In fact, I dare say the best, maybe. Anyway, next, Getting to my number 5, getting into the top 5 now. Resolutions. An episode that when it first aired, I refused to watch because I thought it would suck. Because I hated the concept of Janeway and Chakotay getting together. Because it's a cliche in Hollywood that whenever there's a female lead and a male lead sharing the top billing, that they always have to hook up. Which is annoying. But it was so natural. It was so well written. It was so organic, unlike the bullshit they'll do later on with other characters like Tom and B'Elanna. It was very organic and really well earned. Like that one scene where Chakotay tells the legend of the different tribes, where it was really just a story about himself and Janeway. That was so powerful. That was so powerful. And yeah, it is a bit regretful that they didn't actually show them hook up on screen. They kind of just have them hold hands and imply. But if you ask me, they definitely did it. Like, definitely. But like, it's the ending was so tragic too that that they had to go back on Voyager and pretend like, and be professional again, and pretend like they didn't have, or bury their feelings for each other and professionalism. And there was the subtlety of how tragic it is, because they didn't play sad music. In fact, they played kind of happy music, and they were being all professional, but there was definitely that like subtext of how tragic it is. And that's so good. That's so good storytelling. And also the storyline with Tuvok being captain, even though it should have been Tom Paris who's insubordinate, not Harry Kim, but leaving that aside, also very interesting. Also interesting seeing Tuvok in that position of command, and then bringing back the Doctor's Vidian girlfriend. That was great. This is something I didn't expect Voyager to do. And and how they were able to defeat the Vidians and get the cure. Powerful stuff. So overall, really good episode. So next we'll get into my number 4, fourth best episode of season 2, and that is Persistence of Vision. This is, I think, one of the creepiest episodes of the entire franchise. I freaking love it. I'm usually not good into horror episodes, but I like the ones that are creepy, more of outright horror. And this one is definitely very creepy. It's about this alien going by and manipulating people and playing telepathic mind games with them, and it's really interesting character stories. So this is another episode I refused to watch when it first aired because it had that stupid Hollow novel in it, and I thought the whole episode would be about it, but it's actually not. It's just a jumping off point for Janeway, and also it's just like done so well, the way Janeway starts to go slowly mad, but then it spreads to the rest of the crew and they start hallucinating and seeing shit, and then it turns into an episode about Cass, and again using her telepathic powers, something that I think is very interesting that the show should have done more of, where she has to use her telepathic abilities to defeat this alien, and it indicates that her power is a lot stronger than she even knows, and so that, and it's just creepy as hell how the whole crew just turns into statues and succumb to this. Now, I know some people complain about him saying that he just does it because he can, but I actually kind of like that. I kind of like that he doesn't really have a reason for doing it, that he just likes fucking with people. He's like an internet troll. And that makes sense to me. I think there would be people out there like that. The thing I thought was a little bit cheesy and over the top was the whole thing. It was like, oh, I would love to accommodate you, but you see, I'm not even here, and then he disappears. Like, that was a bit pretentious, I think, but it sounded like a cheesy horror trope of the end question mark kind of thing, but no, I still really like this episode. So now, getting into my 10 rated episodes, the best of the best, starting with my number 3, Life Signs. I think I did up this from a 9 to a 10. I love this episode. I think it, along with, I mentioned Rejoined over in Deep Space Nine as being one of the best romantic episodes of the franchise. I actually did a countdown like 10 years ago where I did call this the best romantic episode of the franchise. But I think I'd probably put it slightly below Rejoined now. Maybe Rejoined would be number one. This would be number two. But it's funny that the two best romance episodes of the franchise came out the same year. But I think this is very powerful. And again, really well acted. Really, the romance builds and is earned. And I think it's actually a hard thing to sell a one episode romance because you don't have that much time to do it, and you have a lot of failures such as fucking Meridian over in DS9, but this succeeds, and it has a really powerful core at the story about how she had to live her whole life with disease, and she thinks that she's ugly, and she just finds it really weird to be like beautiful all of a sudden and to like look healthy and have people not recoil at her, and how she likes that so much she doesn't want to go back to who she was, but the doctor has to convince her that she deserves to live and that he will still love her no matter what. And that scene at the end where he dances with her when she's back in her original form, so good, so powerful, so much feelings, brings me to tears. And of course you get the funny scenes with the doctor being awkward because he's not really sure how to handle romantic situations, something I can relate to as a younger lad. And that moment where he just blurts out, "Oh, I'm attracted to you," whatever, at the wrong time. That's kind of Kess's fault, let's be fair, because she just said, "Tell her how you feel." She didn't give him more advice on technique and when was appropriate to do so, which clearly she should have done. But so I blame Kess. But no, very powerful episode. So we get to my number 2 now, which I believe was in my top 10 episodes of Voyager, probably still will be, and that's Resistance. Such a powerful episode, such good acting. It's a unique episode of Voyager. It's not the kind of episode Voyager usually does. It has Janeway stuck on this planet. Well, that's because they're breaking the fuck out of the Prime Directive. So it is out of character in that regard, but it's for good episode. It's for good purpose. It's for have this powerful character story, Janeway dealing with this crazy old man who she dismisses at first, but is always respectful of him. Other people are rude and disrespectful and disregard him, but she never does. But she does kind of dismiss him as a bit loopy. But then once she realizes the tragedy behind his story, like, she does everything she can to help him. In fact, she tried to push him away in order to save his life, but he kept coming back because he thought that she was his daughter. But when we get the revelation that both his wife and daughter got killed by this authoritarian regime, and then he then gets killed saving Janeway's life, and she says, yes, I am your daughter, and your mother's fine, and we forgive you. Like, oh God, that brings a tear to my eye every single time. That is so damn powerful. Such a powerful, remarkable episode. So now we will get to my number 1 favorite episode of season 2, which I had called my number 2 favorite episode of the entire show of Voyager, which I'm not sure if it will keep that title. It might actually drop a little bit. It will still be my top 5, I'm sure, but it might drop a little bit. But God, I fucking love this episode. My number 1 is Deadlock. It handles like the duplication of Voyager and there being 2 Voyagers so well. I think it makes it extremely clear that there is no original and copy, that both Voyagers are both equally valid. And so that makes it more interesting when one of the ships gets like the shit beat out of it and is falling apart and there's sparks flying and the bridge is in shambles, and then so you think the other Voyager will survive, but turns out no, that Voyager gets boarded by the Vidians, and the Vidians start murdering everyone, ripping out the organs. And that's actually the Voyager crew. Like, that is valid. That's Tuvix who got killed. These characters actually got murdered. It had one of the best badass moments of the entire show when the Vidians went to the bridge and Janeway's just like, oh, welcome to the bridge. And then they look over, the self-destruct's about to go off, and they blow up and all die. It was such a badass moment. And it's just such emotion, too. Like, the music they were playing while the Vidians are going around slaughtering everyone. It's like such powerful, really emotional stuff. And at the start, the baby dies! Like, that, no, I did not see that coming, and Harry Kim dies. Like, it is so shocking and powerful. And then the weird bit where the baby and Harry Kim from the other Voyager come over to that Voyager in order to, compensate for the loss of them. Like, Janeway's response is perfect. Mr. Kim, weird is part of the job. Really remarkable, really highlight of the entire franchise. And yeah, I think this does deserve to be in my top 20 favorite episodes of the entire franchise. Love this episode. Clearly the best episode of season 2, Deadlock. So that is it for my ranking all the episodes of season 2 of Voyager. Please, if you would, join me as I continue to cover all of Deep Space Nine and all of Voyager. We'll be starting season 3 up shortly. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and yeah, if you really want to support the channel, you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below, different rewards for different tiers, such as pre-releases. You can leave comments, I'll read my videos, and I have a series of Patreon-only videos where I revisit my reviews exclusively for Patreon supporters. So, let's see what's coming up on the channel next. Monday I'll be doing a video on shows that have a lot of Star Trek actors in them. And on Thursday I'll talk about why Voyager's ending was so lackluster. And then on Saturday I'll be doing my commentary on the writing of Season 3 of Voyager. Getting into some behind the scenes things and stuff, and my personal opinion on the writing of Season 3 of Voyager, so you can join me for that. And yeah, be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.